Hi friends, welcome to Cracku's video series. In this video, I will discuss the XAT exam. So XAT is the second most important examination in the examination schedule. So now that you are mostly done with your CAT, all that preparation is there behind you. Now how exactly should you now start your preparation for XAT 2022? In case you have not actually prepared for CAT, if you have not had the experience of CAT, even then you can sit for XAT 2022 and go ahead with the preparation for this exam. So I'll tell you everything about the exam, what are the questions in it, what is its format, and how to prepare for it, what subjects are there, what is its syllabus, everything when it comes to XAT 2022, I will be covering in this particular video. I'll also be explaining how to use our XAT 2022 crash course. It is basically a focus course essentially targeted at cracking the exam. So let us take a look at let's take a look at the exam, and once we have a good hold of what is there in the exam, we'll see how exactly we should go go about cracking the exam. So let's get started. So the first things that we have to remember as far as that, the important details. So remember in this, it's a 3-hour exam. So like XAT 2021, it is most likely to be from 9:30 to 12:30. In the 3 hours exam, it is split into two parts. The first part is of 165 minutes where you have 75 MCQ questions, that is questions on quantitative ability and data interpretation, questions on decision making, and questions on verbal ability and reading comprehension. So all of them are given in the form of a single paper. You can move about this 75 question paper in any way you want. You want to go verbal, then some decision making, then some quant, that is up to you. How you split your 165 minutes is entirely up to you, which means that it is very important to have a strategy going in. So we'll take a look at the strategy also, but just know that there are 100 questions, 75 MCQ questions and 25 non-GK questions as such. 25 MCQ questions which are a part of the second part. The part 1 is your normal exam of VARC, decision making and quant. The second part is also MCQ, but that is general knowledge. So these are the two different parts. First you get the part 1. After you are done with your 165 minutes, the second part starts. So there is a basic overview of the exam. Now in this 165 minutes, you will have 26 VA and verbal ability and reading comprehension questions. You will have 21 decision making questions, and you will have 28 quant and data interpretation questions. Now each of these sections will have their individual cutoffs. So it can't be that you just solve only verbal ability questions and you just solve quant questions and don't attempt anything from decision making, because each section has its sectional cutoff. So you have to remember that when you are taking the exam, that you have to solve you have to clear each individual cutoff. You have to solve enough questions to clear the individual cutoff. So when you are starting your paper, the 75 questions paper, just think of how many questions you need to solve, what is your accuracy rate in the given questions, and what is the bare minimum you need to solve per section. Now once you are done with the minimum per section, you have to then think that apart from this bare minimum per section, I should also attempt some buffer questions so that even if I get my accuracy wrong, or if my one entire RC is wrong or one entire DI set is wrong, still I'll be clearing all the sectional cutoffs. Now after doing these two things, what you should do is, I have attempted enough from each of the subsections to actually clear off the cutoffs. Now I should focus on the section that I'm actually good at. So if you are very good at verbal and reading comprehensions, focus on that section. If you are very good at quant and DI, focus on that section so that your overall score gets boosted. So the overall score matters, the sectional cutoffs matter. But after you have attempted enough to actually clear the sectional cutoffs, make sure that you focus on clearing the overall cutoff. Now in the second part, which is the 25 GK questions, over here you have, in the first part, which is the 75 MCQ questions, you have +1 for every correct answer, minus 0.25 for every incorrect answer, and if you leave more than 8 questions unattempted, for every question over 8 questions, you are penalized minus 0.1 marks. So suppose if you have left 9 questions unattempted, you will get minus 0.1 marks deducted from the whole score. Suppose you have left 15 questions of these 75 unattempted, then for the additional 7 questions that you have left unattempted, you will get 7 into this, so that will be 0.7. So you have to remember, you can't leave large parts of the paper unattempted because there will be some penalty for it. Now there is a reason for that. In certain parts of the paper, the cutoffs are fairly low. So they don't want it to happen that you just don't attempt anything and clear off just by not attempting anything. For example, there are 21 decision making questions, and often the cutoff is in single digit. So that tempts some people to say that, okay, if the cutoff is in single digit, then I'll just leave 12 questions or 13 questions from decision making. Why get, especially when I have no clear answer one way or the other, I'll leave it. But they want to incentivize that. So therefore, there are negative marks even for leaving questions unattempted. So it is minus 0.25 for incorrect answer, and for unattempted over 8 questions, you have minus 0.1. So do not go in thinking that I will leave large sections of decision making or I will leave large sections of a particular topic, because it will be difficult to do so because of the negative marking. Having said that, since the negative marks for incorrect answer is 2.5 times the negative marks for leaving it unattempted, it still makes sense to leave it unattempted if you are absolutely clueless about the answer. There are 5 options. So the chance of you just taking a fluke shot and getting the right answer is also lower than in, say, CAT. So unless you are reasonably sure, don't actually attempt the question. If you are completely clueless, don't attempt the question. If you're stuck between 2 choices, it might make sense to actually attempt the question, because there is negative marks even for leaving it unattempted. So this is about the first part and how to actually go about it. Now the second part is that also one more thing that I didn't write down, there are 5 options per question. So unlike CAT, which has 4 options, here you have 1 extra option, so 5 options per question. So it essentially reduces your probability also of getting questions right or getting questions right by fluke in a way. The thing that you have to remember is that there is GK, which is part 2. You have 15 minutes to answer it. 15 minutes is generally more than enough to answer 25 GK questions. Remember, there's no negative marking here, so no negative marking. And the exact use or how this GK is going to be utilized is kind of unclear. They say it will be incorporated in your admission process in the second part during PI, etc. They might use it as an input to see how aware you are, etc. But its actual use or how it is used is not very clear. It is not part of your XAT cutoff, nor any sectional cutoff is there. So its use is, I think, mostly in the interview phase, not in the actual examination phase. This score will influence you. You should definitely prepare for GK. I'm not saying to take it lightly, but GK is not going to help you clear any cutoff as such. Okay, it's not going to be part of your overall XAT score, and it is not going to be directly a part of whether you get shortlisted or not. But after you get shortlisted, it might affect you in the interview process. This is the bare basic of how the exam is going to be. Now, since this is going to be like one slot, 3 hours, you have to prepare for yourself in that format. 3 hours is a longer format than CAT format, so you have to have the stamina for sitting for longer periods of time. You have to have the ability to actually solve for longer periods of time. And decision making makes a huge difference in this. So you should have the ability to think like a manager. So that is the basic difference between XAT and CAT. There's a lot more emphasis on managerial ability than just simple aptitude. So with that basic this of XAT, I'll actually move on. One more crucial thing that I'll actually tell you about XAT is that in CAT you get an entire booklet to solve. That is not the case with XAT. You get like an A4 size paper. So even space management plays a role when it comes to XAT. You have to solve everything in the A4 size paper. So I remember while I was solving XAT 2021, I had to actually mark off an area. So essentially whenever you solve, if you have the habit of solving or taking up large spaces, that would not be a very good idea when it comes to XAT 2021. Try as much as possible to minimize the space you take to solve questions. Learn to solve questions in your head, learn to solve equations in your head, do calculations in your head, because you won't have space to do it on that A4 size sheet paper. And there will be some DI sets which involve tables, and for tables you will need contiguous space. So you make sure that when you see the paper, right, and you see there is a DI set, mark off an area of your A4 size paper for that DI set. What I did while solving the XAT 2021 was that I did the DI at the very end, and I just said that I don't want to have that I have distributed space in that A4 size paper and I don't have any proper block of area to actually draw the table to solve the question. So I marked off an area saying that I will not touch this area so that I can put my DI table over here. So space management also plays a role. So what I would suggest is from now on, whenever you are taking the XAT mock, make sure you do it in the 9:30 to 12:30 slot. You go do it in one go and you make sure you solve everything like as you would actually attempt the paper. and just keep one A4 size paper with you, because you have to actually simulate the experience as much as possible. In this course, you have 5 XAT mocks. For each of those 5 XAT mocks, I want you to actually follow this particular method, 9:30 to 12:30, one A4 size paper. That's it. Okay, now this is about the actual exam and the exam experience. Now let's take a look at what is the syllabus as such, what is exactly asked. I first go with what is similar with CAT, what is the same things as far as CAT and XAT is concerned, and then I will actually tell you what is the difference. So where if you have actually prepared for CAT, what extra things you have to do to clear XAT. So firstly, beginning with things that are similar. So the biggest part of that is similar to the biggest part of CAT Quant, which is arithmetic. So arithmetic in the form of time, speed, distance, time and work, profit and loss, ratio and proportion, percentages, all of these simple questions make a appearance, as much importance in XAT as they are in CAT. These are generally this, if you are somebody who is weak in Quant, this will be your friend. So make sure you solve as many questions from these particular topics as much as possible. When it comes to the crash course, we have given videos for each of these concepts along with concept tests, along with a lot of study room tests, topic tests. So make sure that if you are weak in Quant, you are very strong in this, because there will be sufficient questions from this for you to actually do fairly well or have a strong base when it comes to your Quant attempt. So if you are weak in Quant, make sure that you do well in this. Even if you're good in Quant, this is the area you should absolutely must do well in. If you get arithmetic questions wrong, you're not doing well overall. Arithmetic questions are basically the easier questions. So you must make sure that these are the questions that you absolutely get right, and get right in less time. So that is as far as arithmetic is concerned. Now when you come to geometry, similar to CAT, we have triangles, circles, coordinate geometry, polygon, solids and mensuration. I will tell you what is extra in the next slide. But basically, whatever you did for CAT, make sure that you revise every single thing. Also remember, many geometry questions that come in XAT are direct formula application. So you have to remember, most often in CAT, the direct formula application kind of questions do not come. But in XAT, many are direct formula applications. For example, simple questions like Ptolemy's theorem, direct formula application. Simple questions like alternate segment theorem, direct formula application. Such simple application questions do not come in CAT, but they come so often in XAT, which means that the importance of learning and remembering formulae, especially from geometry, is very high. So you have to mug up every single formula, you have to remember every single formula, you can't wing it there. So remember, direct formula application comes a lot, you have to remember every single formula from geometry. Then comes the number systems, HCF, LCM kind of question, factors, remainder theory questions. Remember, you do not have a calculator over here. Unlike CAT, you do not have a calculator, which means what? Which means that you will get remainder theory questions. You will get questions on remainders when some large number is divided by a particular divisor. What is the remainder when this number 3 raised to 41 is divided by 4? So such kind of questions are going to make an appearance in XAT, because you don't have a calculator to do it quickly. Even in a normal calculator, it is difficult to do it. Like the CAT calculator, it is difficult to do that. But when the calculator is not there, it becomes much more difficult for you to answer those kind of questions, and then those kind of questions do come in. So remember, remainders also comes, factors, cyclicity of factors, LCM and HCF, all important for as far as that are concerned. Progressions and series also is important, same as CAT. Algebra and modern maths. Algebra and modern maths, again you have to have a very good handle of linear equations, quadratic equations, polynomials, functions, surds, indices, logarithms. As far as somebody who is weak in Quant is concerned, I said that this is very important for you. This part, LCM and HCF, is also fairly important for you if you are weak in Quant. When it comes to algebra, if you are weak in Quant, this is the place where a lot of people struggle, especially if you have not had any experience in Quant. When it comes to your undergrad, if you have had a commerce undergraduation or an arts undergraduation, you will slightly struggle with algebra. People with an engineering undergraduation will slightly have an advantage, or even a basic sciences undergraduation will have an advantage when it comes to algebra, because they just have had a longer experience of solving algebraic equations. You have had engineering maths for the first year of engineering, so students who have done engineering have slightly more experience than you. And since they have done engineering maths, which is like slightly more algebraic, they have slightly greater ability and ease with algebra as compared to non-engineering backgrounds. But this doesn't mean that algebra should be something that you should shun completely. A lot of people completely shut down in the face of algebra. That should not be your response, because within algebra also there are some easy things that you can do. For example, any question on linear equations does not require a lot of higher level algebraic concepts. Same as with inequalities. These require not higher level algebraic kind of equations, but rather most of the time inequality questions are geometry and coordinate geometry questions. They are visualization questions. So all of that, you and a non-engineering student background will have the same ability as such. So if you are somebody who struggles in that, focus on linear equations, focus on inequalities, focus on quadratic equations. Quadratic equations, unlike other polynomial equations, generally are easier for somebody even from a non-engineering background to solve. So these are the three parts that you should actually focus on when it comes to algebra. From modern maths, focus on logarithms. Logarithms is just basically, there are like 11 or 12 formula that you have to mug up. Mug up those 12 formulas, remember how to use them. Any equation from logarithms will be based on those 12 formulas, and it will be direct application. Not much brains involved in logarithms, not much manipulation involved. I as a paper setter know how limited the questions that are there from logarithms can be. They are generally direct application of formula. There is no way in which you can actually make it difficult also. By most I can just make it lengthy. I can't make a logarithms questions difficult, which means that if you struggle with algebra, if you struggle with quant, logarithms will be your friend, because essentially if you remember the formulae, you can solve a logarithms question. So this part is something that you should focus on. Remember all the formulae from logarithms. You will be able to solve logarithms questions. The last one is set theory, Venn diagrams, PNC probability. Comes less often, like 1 or 2 questions as such. But essentially those are important in a way that those 1-2 questions if you can get, then your score will be boosted. But set theory, Venn diagrams come with lesser frequency. There are just one-off questions here or there that come from this. Okay, now I'll take a look at questions, basically the part of the syllabus which is essentially extra or additional to your CAT syllabus. So the part that is extra or additional to your CAT syllabus is firstly probability. Now if you remember your CAT preparation, many people just completely ditch permutations and combinations and probability. Not so for that. You have to actually practice probability questions, you have to practice permutations and combinations questions. Those actually come in XAT regularly, they come in XAT. Questions on picking cards, questions on throwing dice, questions on tossing coins come regularly in XAT. So you have to practice your probability questions, including you have to practice things like binomial theorem, Bayes theorem, all the kinds of probability, higher level advanced probability concepts that you would have probably ignored for CAT, you have to revise for XAT. Now trigonometry is something additional that you see often in XAT but not in CAT. Especially you have to remember the trigonometric identities. So this was something that a lot of people, even like those who had engineering background, would have learned in their engineering mathematics or 12th standard trigonometry and promptly forgotten it. So a lot of this is just basically remembering and practicing trigonometric identities. Those identities or formulas will help you. Trigonometry questions are generally harder, especially the ones based on trigonometric identities. So if you struggle with quant, this is not the place where you should spend a lot of time. But if possible, please remember the trigonometric identities. Heights and distances are basically a version of trigonometry, but easier version, because it is based on real life examples. If this is the height, this is the angle, what is the distance between the base of the ladder and the wall? So basically things that you can visualize, but based on trigonometry as such. Now when you have heights and distances question, whether you are from engineering background, non-engineering background, you can solve them. So make sure that even if you leave trigonometric, higher trigonometric functions and identities, if you are not comfortable in quant, do not leave heights and distances. Heights and distances are easy questions, you should be able to solve them. So again, if I am circling anything, somebody who is not comfortable in quant should still attack as such. Remainder theorems. Remainder theorems generally tend to be harder questions. Remembering them takes time and effort, but if you are at the higher edge, 90 percentile plus income when it comes to quant, this is something you have to do. You have to remember all of the remainder theorems, Wilson's theorem, Chinese remainder theorem, Euler's theorem, Fermat's theorem, all of those remainder theorems you have to remember, along with cyclicity of factors, along with concepts of how to take modulus, how product of two model, if you split the factors, how do you do that? All of those things you have to consider when it comes to remainder theorems. Now, another type of question that comes in XAT, which has completely disappeared from CAT, is data sufficiency. If you are somebody who has prepared for GMAT, you know these data sufficiency questions quite a bit and well, but if you have not, just try to practice a few data sufficiency questions, because remember, in data sufficiency, it is not about solving the question, it is about knowing whether the answer is knowable or not. So if you are somebody who is good at quant, just know that as long as you know that you will get a unique answer, you can stop solving the data sufficiency question. So if you are very good at quant, these are the type of questions where you can save time so that you can do better in other questions as such. So you have time to spend on other questions. Data sufficiency questions are not harder, they are based on all the topics that, like the base topic is all the topics that I have covered till now. They just require you to understand that based on the information given, can I get a unique answer or can I not get a unique answer? So this is an additional thing that you have to do when it comes to quant practice. Remember, if you are weak in quant, all of these will be generally harder for you to do, but of these, heights and distances is definitely something that you should do. This is as far as quant and DI is concerned. What I didn't put is basically DI. Which I didn't put in the quant part, but in DI you have DI based on tables, charts, bar charts and pie charts and histograms, all of those things will come. So just make sure that you are very comfortable with reading different types of charts, reading bar charts, reading line charts, pie charts, converting them into table. Once you have your table, it is just basically table manipulation to get to the result. When it comes to DI, just remember you need enough space on your A4 sheet paper to draw a table, and then you have to convert whatever is given in that DI set into a table and find out what information is needed based off of that table. That's all that is there when it comes to DI as such. So this is basically your syllabus for quant and DI. If you are somebody who struggles with quant and DI, don't worry. There are two different sections that you can actually cover up with. If it is quant and DI is your strength, make sure that you solve every single question. There are 28 questions, 28 chances for you to move ahead of your peer group. Make sure you solve every single one of them. Now let's come to the second. This is essentially not the second part in the examination, but I'll come to DM later. But the second part, which is common with CAT, which is verbal and logical ability. So essentially here you have verbal mixed with LR as such. Not essentially LR, but essentially it is mixed with critical reasoning as such. So in this, remember that you will have your normal reading comprehension. There will be like 3 or 4 RCs and like 14 or 15 questions as such. Most of the RCs will be similar to RCs from CAT, but they can generally tend to be longer, more objective, and the questions also tend to be fairly direct questions. So remember, in CAT you had objective questions, subjective questions. Objective questions being directly something that you can refer to the passage, read, okay, what are the 3 factors, and you go and see the 3 factors and then you can answer the question. More objective questions come than subjective questions, which is good because it means that it requires less amount of ambiguity in actually solving these kind of questions. So remember, reading comprehension is not as difficult when it comes to CAT, but then they throw a googly in the form of a poem reading comprehension. So a poem RC is added, there are generally 2 questions in it, and it is completely difficult for many people to even understand what is going on in the poem. I'll be honest with you, I'm not somebody who is good at poems, understanding poems. So there's a trick that I use when it comes to poems as such. I do not understand poems, but I know that the poem, there are innumerable ways in which I can actually interpret a poem. But the only ones that matter are the 5 options that come when it comes to the question and options. So what I do is I read the poem once, I then go to the questions, I read each of those options, and then based on that, if any option clicks, okay, yes, this option seems like what is suggested in the poem, then with that lens that okay, this is one of the options, I reread the poem, and now with that lens, does it make sense? Does this poem make sense given that I know that okay, these are the 4 options that are there? Based on that, does this poem now make sense with the particular option? Then you know which are the right options as such. This is not going to take you a lot of time to read. The poem is going to be like 8 lines or 12 lines at max. So it's actually not a huge investment in terms of time. So read the poem, go and read the options for the questions, and based on the options, go and reread the poem. That will give you a good understanding of what the poem is about. You have 5 options. 3 of the options about the topic of the poem or the subject of the poem would be obviously wrong, not in line at all with what is given in the poem as such. Now you will have 2 options which will seem close to the topic of the poem, but one will not be connected to most of the poem or would not be the implied meaning of the poem. The implied meaning would be something which is slightly deeper meaning, slightly more profound meaning of what is given in the poem. So this is where a lot of people struggle, but if it is something that you are good at, if literature and verbal is something that you are good at, definitely do the poem RCs. Now we come to the parajumbles. There will be 2 parajumbles, and these are generally 5 sentences, but you have options. So because there are options, this becomes easier to solve. But on the other hand, these guys last year, what we saw in 2021 is that they did not take anything which was contiguous sentences. In fact, I searched for many of the sources, they were not from the same paragraph also. It was like somewhere from the top of the article, then 2 lines from the middle of the article, 1 line from near the end of the article, 1 line from the very end of the article. So when you have something like that, it becomes difficult to piece those lines together using connectors. So you can't use connectors like additionally, nevertheless. All those connecting words are no longer useful. What is useful is finding out the logical link between the sentences. So pages, I would actually argue, are harder in XAT than they are in CAT, because in CAT most of the time at least the source lines will be close to each other. In XAT the source lines are not even close to each other, not part of the same paragraph also. So that is far more harder than it is there in CAT. But here the additional ease that is added is that you have options. So you make use of the options. Based on your initial instinct, you will know that these lines should be at the start, these lines should be at the end. Now after you have an idea, okay, 3 should be at the start of the paragraph, 2 should be at the end of the paragraph. Look at the options which actually have that kind of a format, then read the sentences in that order so that you get the right answer. Now the next area that I would suggest, so here is where the paper departs or diverges from the CAT format is you have questions on grammar and sentence correction. Remember, grammar and sentence correction is fairly, there are a lot of rules to remember, but essentially we have covered it extensively in the form of videos on our crash course. So it's not undoable, it's not something which is that's only if you have had a very good command on the language that you can actually solve. If you have a good command on English language, it will help certainly. But even if you remember certain things that you have to look out for, certain specific types of grammatical errors that are generally introduced in these kind of questions, even then you will be able to solve these kind of questions better. So remember, there is also the questions which are on grammar and sentence correction. You should expect around 2 grammar and sentence correction questions or even 3 grammar and sentence correction questions. Then you have questions on critical reasoning. This is the next most important part when it comes to verbal and logical ability. Essentially, the logical ability is basically critical reasoning and like reasoning using statements, etc. So this part becomes the logical ability part. So critical reasoning, make sure that you see critical reasoning, parts of critical reasoning, that is what is parallel reasoning, what is the premise, assumptions, inferences, conclusions, what is the role of the part highlighted in bold. All of those critical reasoning questions you should, critical reasoning videos you should know, because essentially most of the students who are preparing only for XAT, or if you have not prepared for any part of critical reasoning, you would not even know the underlying concepts of critical reasoning. So it's important to see those videos because this is something entirely new for most people as such. Now you have the some easy questions come in the form of fill in the blanks. These are generally, there will be one sentence given with multiple blanks in them. So 2 blanks in the same sentence, 3 blanks in the same sentence, and you have to choose one option, an option which fits all 3 blanks properly. Okay, then you have also other vocabulary questions such as analogies, and all of these are simpler questions. So if you struggle in or you have less time, make sure you always answer these questions at the very end, because they'll be very less time consuming as such. Okay, so this is the general format as such. These are the additional topics. The bulk of it will still be reading comprehension, it will still be para jumbles and grammar and sentence correction, and in logical ability it will be critical reasoning and reasoning based on statements. So when I say reasoning based on statements, basically it will be like you'll be given certain statement or a conclusion, and you'll be given statement 1 and 2, and you will be asked which of the assumptions is implicit in this particular conclusion, which of these statements is an implicit assumption, which of these statements strengthens it, which of these weakens it. So all these kind of reasoning based, again it is a form of critical reasoning only, extension of critical reasoning, but the format of the question is slightly different. So these are basically reasoning questions, critical reasoning questions based on statements as such, rather than a paragraph with like critical reasoning questions. Okay, so this is the general format that you have to follow. Now we'll come to the most make or break section when it comes to XAT, which is that of decision making. Remember, decision making is something that most people are unable to do properly. The cutoffs generally are in single digit, and if you have seen XAT 2021, you will know that XAT 2021 DM sets were very out there, as in it was difficult for even us to get the right answer, and they didn't even give a key properly. So decision making is going to be a hard section to crack, but there are certain things that you should remember and practice when it comes to decision making. Ethical decisions, the legality of decisions, decisions when you have to rank the importance of factors. All of these basically require you to don a managerial hat and exhibit managerial maturity as such. The reason you have to remember why have they essentially included this section when it comes to that, they want students who are mature, who have a certain amount of emotional intelligence about them. So that is basically what is checked in this section. What is your emotional intelligence? Are you able to be considerate with people? Are you able to consider what are the implications of actions? The first order implications, the second order implications. The importance of taking the sound judgments when it comes to business. Do you have the maturity to do that? So if you think of all of that, that is basically why this section has been even introduced. Now, of this kind of decision making questions, what we have tried to do is, we have tried to split them up into human resources decisions, ethical dilemmas. Ethical dilemmas is what is the ethically right thing to do. Human resources decisions is basically where somebody has to be fired or somebody has to be reprimanded. There is some human resources issue at the core of it. Ethical dilemmas can be even personal kind of ethical dilemmas, whether you should allow somebody who has cheated to get away. If you are a police inspector, what kind of crime has to be punished. So ethical dilemmas can be anything, not just necessarily in the business context as well. Then there are strategic and business decisions which are related to essentially evaluating what information is needed to enter markets. So you have to have some idea of business decisions as such. Basically like how to evaluate a business proposal. So all of that is essentially there in the strategic and business decisions. Then you have behavioral or personal decisions, which essentially check how mature you are as a person. So all of these essential things, we have made videos on all of them so that you know exactly how to tackle the different types of sets that are there. Now these are generally the parts that are difficult to do, the harder parts to do. These two parts, which are essentially DIs based on Quant based DIs or LRs based on maximization, minimization or categorization, these are essentially similar to your CAT LRs and DIs, and that would mean that they will have less ambiguity about it, they will have higher a chance of being correct, which would mean that if you have a higher chance of being correct, it would mean that you can clear the cutoff if you do these well as such. So make sure that in your DM section also, you actually try and find out the questions which are not decision making, which are basically your simple LRDI kind of questions. They also come, the simple LR questions, the simple maximization, minimization questions. That is basically, we have actually covered that in the help of a video, but basically if you remember, I think maybe in 10th standard or 12th standard you had, which is basically quantitative programming. What is the max number of units that you can make? What is the break even point? if you go beyond this kind of variable cost, or the cost rises or the fixed cost rises. So basically those kind of problems which are essentially quantitative in nature. And when you have something which is quantitative in nature, the accuracy is going to be better than things which are ethical dilemmas as such. So always make sure that any of those kind of sets, that if it comes in XAT 2022, you make sure that you solve it and you solve it correctly. Now we'll come to the general knowledge aspect. Now remember, there is like a 70-30 split when it comes to general knowledge. 70% is like static general knowledge and 30% would be the current general knowledge, which would mean that you need to read papers. Reading newspapers is important, but you also have to have some kind of static general knowledge, but basically like who won which award, who is the head of state of which country, what are the currencies, matching of currencies with countries, capitals with countries, heads of states with countries, heads of organizations with countries, heads of banks with countries like central, World Bank, etc. So all those kind of things which are static knowledge you have to remember as such. Basically just see the different sections that generally come when it comes to GK. So you have awards, then heads of basically can be heads of organizations, heads of state, capitals and currencies. Generally all of these, just try to remember from the current context what is the current state of this, and just remember it just before the examination. Sports, what are the trophies, who has won which trophy, who won the T20 World Cup, all of that is important information as such. Then you have certain part which is kind of static knowledge like Indian civics, that is which is the topmost court, or what are the different petitions that you can file, or whatever is the this main articles of the Indian constitution. All of those are also like essentially GK questions that can be asked. They are considering how well informed you are, and knowing the regulatory format, the operating format as such of India for a managerial student is important. If you are completely clueless about the legal framework of India, it would not be a good idea for you to be the manager or heading a particular organization. So that is the outlook you should have. What do I need to know? When it comes to be, if I am the CEO, I should know who are the heads of organizations, what are the currencies, capitals of the world, and you should have some idea of geography, of Indian history, Indian civics. All of that would be important as such. Another thing that you have to remember is that this is a business examination at the end of the day. So any corporate or acquisitions that are there, you should know. What are the privatization initiatives taken by the Indian government? Anything which is mergers and acquisitions, IPOs, all of those business related news articles you should know and you should be well aware of. Okay, so that is as far as general knowledge is concerned. Now I'll come to the part of how to use this course. So I have given you a lot of idea of what we are actually doing to cover the different aspects, but I will give you a basic idea of how this course works. So what we have done is that we have for every single day we give you a schedule that on this particular day see these concept videos. Each of these concept videos will come with the concept test. So see the concept videos, take the concept test, and what I want you to do in addition to that is practice. See, this practice part will not be put in the part of the schedule, but that is implicit that you have to do that to actually crack XAT. A lot of part of doing well in XAT is having the ease of solving, and that ease of solving comes from solving a lot of questions, and we are giving you like thousands of questions at your disposal to actually solve before XAT. So what I want you to do when it comes to preparation is every single day you have like 1 month schedule as such. It's not a long schedule. For every single day of this month, make sure that you log in every single day at the same time, have a set time of preparation, log in every single day, see what is your task list, make sure you do not fall behind in your task list, you complete every single concept video on time, every single concept test on time, and after your concept test, please go and start practicing. You have to solve certain questions from arithmetic, from algebra, from geometry, from reading comprehension, all different types of sets that you should actually solve so that you have experience of solving them. So always make sure that on a daily basis you are doing that. Also, one thing that I would actually tell you that is in our course, what we have done is the concept videos that we generally focus on are the things that are in addition to your CAT schedule. This is basically, we have covered everything for those who are non-CAT as such, non-CAT applicants as well, those who have not prepared for CAT. So we are giving you a full revision of CAT formulae, CAT all the CAT concepts as well. But if you're prepared for CAT, we are first highlighting the issues or highlighting the concepts which are in addition to CAT. So generally in your playlist, you will find them as the first video. So DM gets a lot of priority. DM also gets a lot of priority because it is generally the area where we see that people don't clear cutoffs. Most people clear cutoffs when it comes to VA and Quant, but many people, very good students, do not clear DM cutoffs. So we emphasize DM quite a bit in this course because it is very crucial to actually clearing. You might think this is 21 questions, the other is 28 and 27, so why 26 and 28, so why is so much importance given to DM? Because DM is the obstacle most people fail. That's why we are giving so much importance to DM. So DM is crucial. Make sure that you do not miss a single DM video and you practice as many DM sets as are there in our study room. Also focus on the additional aspects of Quant and VA. If you have already prepared for CAT, revise those concepts by all means, but also focus on the areas which are new as far as CAT is concerned. Remember, in XAT, there is a greater emphasis on formulae. The direct application of formulae is far more often seen in XAT than in CAT. So always remember, if you think that, okay, I'll just try to find out without remembering the formula in that would work in CAT, because generally in CAT, the direct application of formula is fairly rare in CAT, but it is very common in XAT. So as far as possible, do not leave anything to chance, mug up all the formulae. So that is as far as the course is concerned, what you should focus on. Remember, every single day, do your daily set of tasks. And what we have tried to do is, we have tried to put even the XAT mocks in the schedule. So what I want you to do is start with the schedule, do a few concept videos, and start taking XAT mocks along with them. Do not leave your XAT mocks to the very end of your preparation, because that would not be a good way to actually use it. So you can keep 3 mocks to the very end, but at least take 1 mock in the middle. By 15 December, at least do 1 XAT mock. So you get an idea of how you are doing. If you have not taken a single XAT mock, it will mean that you might get a pretty nasty surprise after nearer to the end of your preparation term. So it's better that you get an idea of how well your preparation is going early on. So by at least 15 December, please make sure that you have taken at least 1 XAT mock. So this is basically how you should use the course, how you should actually go about doing it. We'll be with you in the entire course. We'll be with you. Every concept video, every question that is there, every concept question that we put for you, we just below that video you will see doubts, okay? Through that doubts, you can ask any doubt you want, and we'll be there to answer that for you. Even in your XAT course page, if you go to your XAT course page, you will see the schedule, you will see the task, etc. But you will also see batch interaction. So through the batch interaction, through the batch posts, we'll be talking to you. We'll be letting you know how to use the course, what you can do to improve. If you're facing any kind of issue, please do reach out to us so that we can fix that issue for you on priority. This is just a 1-month course. It is extremely important that you use every single day to the fullest. So best of luck to everybody, and I hope that together we are going to completely crack that. So best of luck everyone.